This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. This week's episode is sponsored by Well Go USA's new shark horror, Beast of War, in select theaters and on digital October 10th. During World War II, a troop of Australian recruits sets out across the Timor Sea until their boat is sunk. Now, a handful of survivors are left clinging to a shrinking life raft, fighting for survival against the ocean's deadliest predator, a giant, hungry shark. From director Kia Roach-Turner and starring Mark Cole-Smith, Joel Nankervis, and Maximilian Johnson, Beast of War is a gripping survival thriller you won't want to miss. See the terror unfold on October 10th. I don't know about you, but I've spent way too much of my life feeling scattered and not good enough for the world, agonizing over all the shoulds. Wondering what I should be doing more of or should be doing less of and how my life should be. I often speak of the tools I use to help combat these feelings, and Calm is one of them. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, and it's here to make you feel better. If you're like me and sometimes you need a little help with navigating life's ups and downs, I highly recommend Calm's sessions. They have guided meditations, grounding exercises, sleep stories, and sleep meditations. Some of them are even just a couple of minutes long for when you need to close your eyes for a second and have a soothing voice recenter you during the day. Their sleep meditations are absolutely beautiful, and they have these gorgeous soundscapes that truly take you to another world. Calm your mind, change your life. Calm has an exclusive offer just for listeners of my show. Get 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/SYTS. This is an amazing value. Go to calm.com/SYTS for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/SYTS. And tell Calm you heard about them from me. Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to tell you some dark Halloween-themed tales from the website reddit.com. I tend to have really bad luck around Halloween, especially in the last few years. Longtime listeners of the show should know that, especially the ones who've been waiting very patiently for the next chapter of Araceli, which is coming. But this year, I've decided it's finally time to break the curse, put up some decorations, which I have not done in many years, and really get into the spirit. And what's a better way than reading some crazy stories from my favorite website? I know we just recently did a dark Reddit. I usually like to, space them out a little bit. But I've never done one that's all Halloween stories. And whilst researching this episode, I found out that while I may have felt cursed around this holiday, others had it way worse. So grab a hot cider and a slice of pumpkin pie, and let's get spooky. These first few stories are from the paranormal subreddit. This one was posted 5 years ago by user Love Imperfectly, and they titled it, "Because he is standing right behind you, haunting in my house with some evidence to support it." I have been sitting on this for a bit for a few reasons. It is really long. I wanted to be able to gather facts to support my story, and quite frankly, I didn't want to type it up while in my house. As you can tell with the stories on my page, I have been engulfed in the gray of this world since I was a child. Until recently, I've never met someone who is as sensitive as me. It was enlightening and equally terrifying. So here is my story. I've been renting my house from a family member for several years now. Since day one, I knew it was haunted. I could feel the energy change the moment I stepped inside, but I could also tell it wasn't necessarily negative. I'm not a stranger to the paranormal, so when little things would happen, like items moving/go missing, inaudible conversations in other rooms, or even my dog looking at an empty corner or wall, I wouldn't usually react. I even nicknamed the ghost Bernadette and would jokingly ask her/it to stop. However, within the last 6 months, the activity has intensified. I've had individuals in my house who are complete skeptics, but they have witnessed glasses thrown across the room and shatter everywhere, pictures falling from the walls, something/someone walking down the empty hallway, hearing it, and hearing people talking that weren't there. I even had to have my brother check that my gas alarm was still active because of the random areas in the house smelling like rotten eggs. Halloween night, I had a very small get-together of 6 people. One of my guests brought her wife, who I had only met one other time. While my friends were playing games and passing out candy, my friend's wife, we'll call her Emily, pulled me to the side, seemingly upset, and stated she needed to discuss something with me. She first asked if I knew about Mary. I'm running names through my head that my coworker had mentioned, and I've never heard of a Mary. I obviously tell her no. And she proceeds to tell me a very detailed story about my house. She explained that I had 3 spirits in my house: a spirit named Mary, a spirit named Franklin, and that I had a spirit who is always with me named Gary, she thinks. She stated Mary had died in the house a long time ago. Franklin had died on the land before Mary from a plowing accident and was still in his death state. She also confirmed my suspicions of extra activity. A few nights prior, in the middle of the night, I was in bed and jumped up from my sleep from a huge bang against my bedroom wall and a picture falling on the end of the bed. Obviously, I was startled and especially spooked when I could see the indentation in my wall from what appeared to be something that had hit it. I jokingly said, "Not cool, Bernadette," and went back to bed. Emily knew about this. She knew he had hit my wall, and she said it was Franklin's way of trying to get my attention. That when things are thrown in the house or fall off the wall, that is Franklin. Apparently he is angry because I don't react. In my mind at this moment, I'm thinking, who the hell is this woman? I don't know her, and I haven't told anything to her wife about my creepy house. I'm open with my experiences on here, but I'm very hush in person because of others' reactions. So I ask, how do you know this stuff? And her response, still, as I am typing this, chills me to my bones. Because he is standing right behind you. First reaction is to look behind me. Nothing. Second reaction is to ask why I can't see him. He doesn't want me to. Third reaction is, why does he want to scare me? He wants attention. Since that night, the activity in my previously mildly creepy house has been off the charts. I don't get spooked easily. I have seen things that you see in horror movies, but my house is scary. The energy has shifted. I feel like I am constantly in fight or flight mode. I am typing this at work because I feel like someone is constantly looking over my shoulder, and I don't want whatever/whoever it is to read this. I sound crazy. It's just my dog and me in the house, and even he has been acting differently. I've caught him multiple times sitting in the hall looking at nothing, whimpering, and then he runs under the bed. I literally have to drag him out. When I'm changing clothes or taking a shower, I feel uncomfortable because I feel someone is watching me. The house is nearly unbearable to live in at the moment, and I've been at a loss of how to make it go back to my mildly spooky house. I've used my sage twice now, and I think it just pisses Franklin off. With that being said, I have amazing friends and connections to the historical team in my town. With some research, I found Mary and some other interesting details. Mary Frank, 48, died suddenly in my house on August 26th, 1919, from neuralgia. Her spouse, Charles Frank, held the funeral in my house. I haven't been able to find a Franklin yet. However, before the Franks occupied my house, it was a stable for horses. It could be a huge coincidence that Mary's last name is Frank, and maybe Emily didn't get a clear message. I'm honestly not sure. I've asked her since, and she still thinks his name is Franklin. She's even come back to my house and told him to stop. He won't listen. I do plan to keep researching the area for a man named Franklin, but I'm not sure there will be any documentation. Another interesting thing is that I did know a Gary, and he has actually been brought up before. Gary was my mother's best friend's husband, who passed away from a heart attack when I was young. At the time, we lived on 20 acres of land, and he loved to go hunting on our property. When he passed, it was his wish to have his ashes spread on our land. I was told many years ago that Gary watched over me. I know the activity in my house is increasing. I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe because I am more aware now, but I don't feel in danger. I never have because I know Gary is there, now from multiple sources. I'm going to try and attach the pictures, I never have the best of luck with adding them, of Mary's obituary and the lovely spot someone/something put in my wall. I'm sharing this maybe for insight or just an interesting read. And there is a link to the obituary in the original post. There are always links to the original post in the show notes, but I'll read it to you. Mrs. Mary C. Frank, dead. Mrs. Mary C. Frank, wife of Fred Frank, died suddenly of neuralgia of the heart in her home, and the street name is blocked out, at 8 o'clock yesterday morning. Though she had been ill for several days, her death was unexpected. Mrs. Frank was 48 years old. Besides her husband, she is survived by 2 sons and 2 daughters, Edward, Earl, Pauline, and Ruth, 4 brothers, Charles and Wilford Wetzel, Spencer County, J.W. Wetzel, Newport, Kentucky, and Edward Wetzel, Cincinnati, and a sister, Mrs. A.W. Dome, New Albany. Mrs. Frank was a member of the Main Street Methodist Church. The funeral will be held in the family residence at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and the burial will be in Fairview Cemetery. And there is also a picture of the hit on the wall, and it looks like beadboard, if you know what beadboard is. If not, just give it a goog. And it looks like the beadboard is coming apart. It's like been not cracked because it kind of fits together. It looks like it's coming apart, but it's so strange. It looks like I don't know if it's just because of the way the picture is taken, but it looks like it's coming, like it's been pried out away from the wall. So that's really strange. Beautiful beadboard though. I like beadboard, and it looks, I like the color. That's neither here nor there. That's not what you're here for. But I thought that was a very, very great way to start out this Halloween dark Reddit. On to the next story. By the way, I'm fully here in the Halloween spirit with you. I'm actually drinking pumpkin cider right now. It's by the Gourd Tree. If you watch the Bloody Disgusting podcast, I had a can of it also on there. And I'm not even a big, pumpkin pie fan. And that's what it tastes like, a mix of pumpkin and apple. And it is fantastic. Not sponsored, but I found it at Trader Joe's. In case you'd like a nice, tasty fall beverage. And it's also 92 degrees where you are, like it is here today. Fall flavors, summer temperature. You know, what are you going to do? Crack open a nice cold pumpkin cider is what you do. Okay, next one was from Bambarella66, and this was also posted 5 years ago. I didn't even search by date. I guess a lot was popping 5 years ago. This is called I Grew Up in a Haunted House. As it says on the tin, this is exactly that. My memories of the years I lived in a haunted house, aged 8 to 18. It's a little long, but buckle up if you want to hear an actual account of actually living in one and not the Hollywood version. Me and my parents still talk about this, but I'm 30 and engaged now in my own home, and my parents moved soon after I moved out. I guess I just wanted to get it out there because it's all true, and I've tried to explain to so many people who just don't believe it. I thought maybe this community would hear me. The lady that sold my parents this house warned us of weird things going on, but my Christian parents ignored it, and we felt we would be fine. At that time, I think they thought it was all bollocks, to be honest. It was a fixer-upper, but definitely a great house with lots more space than our first. Anyway, as the weeks went by, things got a bit weirder. I quickly learnt when playing in the street, this was the 90s, that children in my neighborhood thought my house was haunted. And to be fair, it being an old, tall Victorian house with a rickety, overgrown Gothic pathway, it was creepy to a kid. And there were many horrible stories about things that happened inside. Kids wouldn't come round and play at my house due to this, and I earned a stigma being the new girl that lives in the haunted house at school. The house was 3 stories high, with banisters running the entire way. Up and out of nowhere, things started dropping from the top of the house to the lower landing through the banister gap. Proper poltergeist shit. Ornaments, vases, dog toys that were never upstairs. Our dogs wouldn't go to the top of the house by the attic. All they would do is bark and whimper at the landing, and I was also absolutely terrified of the entire top floor. I was an only child and wouldn't go upstairs when home alone because it frightened me so damn much. All I can describe it as is as soon as the light wasn't on upstairs, I could feel the presence there with me. An angry, bitter, cold feeling, like a shadow behind me getting bigger and bigger. I'd sprint as fast as I could downstairs, and strangely, even now, more than a decade on, I still have bad dreams about my legs slowing down on the final staircase, like I'm running through water and something is chasing me. So anyway, the weird stuff continued. I started knocking on the wall one evening, playing as a kid, and to my delight, it would respond to me, knocking back, responding and copying my pattern. My mom started absolutely freaking out at this when I showed her, running outside to demand who was knocking to her kid all night, to just find brick wall and air. No one was on the other side. On Halloween, we all heard a scream from the attic, only to brave checking it out, to find it totally vacant and fine. By this point, my parents were spooked. Being religious, they brought a priest in who informed them the upstairs was very negative spiritually, and they should remodel the entirety of it to try to get the spirit out. He told them to gut the attic, bless the area, and ask the spirit to leave. Okie dokie. So they began to remodel the attic into a bedroom/bathroom, etc. The spirit did not like this. At one point, my father claims his leg was pulled through the floor, and sure enough, his leg went through the floor into the downstairs bathroom ceiling. Later, when we had a guest in a separate part of the house, all of a sudden, part of the ceiling fell on his head for absolutely no reason. The builder said it was a complete fluke and didn't make sense. On the last night of converting the attic, I had the worst dream of my life, which I will never forget. My bedroom was en suite, so it had 2 doors, and both were heavy on hinges, like you couldn't open them without pushing down on the handle, just for reference. So this dream, I was watching a man and woman argue. The woman was wearing Victorian clothes. I likened them to Oliver the Musical characters at the time. And the man was in a gentleman's suit. They were arguing back and forth, and I couldn't make out their words clearly, like I was listening underwater. She suddenly looked at me, straight in the eyes, and started screaming and pointing to the floor. Now, trigger warning, because this was terrifying to see as a kid in a dream and nothing I'd ever seen in any film or TV show at that age. On the floor was a dead baby, face down. I woke up hyperventilating in my bed, thinking it was all over, when I looked down at my own bedroom floor to see the same dead baby, but it was crying and contorting. The woman slammed both my bathroom door, the one on hinges, and ran across my room and out the other door. Both my doors were literally swinging, which was physically impossible without someone doing it, and all I could hear was screams and cries. I screamed and woke up to my mom shouting for me to wake up. She said she could hear a racket of slamming doors upstairs, but when she checked, I was tucked up in bed, tossing and turning. I told her my dream, and she told me to come sleep with her. Years later, when I was old enough, she admitted to me that they did research on the house after the priest visit and found information that a maid had been pregnant by the housemaster and forced to kill or abort the baby in the attic. My mom, being spiritual but also Christian, said she had tried to make peace with the spirit after learning this. Nuts, eh? This is just a sprinkling of the crazy that happened over the years in that house. But I bet you're wondering if the conversion, etc. worked. Well, interestingly, it did for us. We all were able to sleep very happily in the new guest room, and no more poltergeist stuff went on. There was still an eerie energy in the loft conversion, but not a threat. It kind of never felt like it was our home, but I'm not sure if old houses ever do. I will say the dog stood firm and hated the upstairs the entire time we lived there. They never accepted it and would bark still. So nothing really weird happened until years later, when I was 17 and got a new boyfriend, who was awful and abusive in the end. But anyway, we were staying in the converted bedroom up there whilst I was home from uni. I never had told him of any of the stories of the house, as we were very new to dating. Anyway, we went to bed, watched a movie, and fell asleep. I was woken to him screaming, saying a Victorian woman was standing over me, watching me sleep, and told him very aggressively that he needs to leave. I kinda didn't mind that. She had good judgment on him. So yeah, there it is. I didn't believe in ghosts until I lived with one for 10 years. Feel free to ask questions. And of course, feel free to go look at some of the comments. They provide a little more information. I usually go over a lot of the comments, but we have a lot to cover for this Halloween episode, so I'm going to leave that up to you. But I love this story. I mean, it sounds like my dream house, honestly. And do you think the Victorian woman was protecting her from yet another bad man, so she wouldn't have to deal with the bad man like she had to deal, like the Victorian woman had to deal with in her lifetime? I think so. That's what I think is happening. Anyway, I would say I would have never I don't know, I didn't see what it looked like, but it sounds like I probably wouldn't have converted the entire attic because I like creepy old things and ghosts, so I don't know if I would have done a bunch of remodeling. Plus, clearly they were new to ghosts because everyone knows they get worse when you start remodeling things and moving stuff around. So, on to our next. This was from Double Stylers, and it was posted 4 years ago. One of my creepiest unexplained thing ever. English is not my first language, so sorry for all mistakes and overall messy narration. So I live in Poland, and this story happened to me in 2005. At that time, I was 18 years old. Since my dad died and my siblings left family house a few years later, we lived only with my mom. But at that time, Halloween night, but in Poland we are not celebrating it. We celebrate All the Saints, that is the next day. She went to my older sister, who lives in Warsaw, to see Pawanski Cemetery. So, as a smart and responsible teenager, I asked my at that time best friend and neighbor, let's call him Andrew, to come over for some beer, etc. He was up for it, but got some stuff to do, so he was about to come later, so I went back home, ate some dinner, it was like 7 to 8 p.m., so not that late, and went to get some shower. When I almost finished, I heard the front door closing, so I yelled at him to sit and wait for me to dry myself. And then it hit me. I locked the front door before I get to shower, and he didn't respond when I yelled. At this point, I should mention that maybe not my house only, but the pretty big area around, and I mean like nearby villages, is full of spooky stories. Not some extra believer or paranoid, so I'm not scared out easily. But this time, I was pretty sure I will encounter someone when I leave the bathroom. But guess what? No one was there. My friend arrived like 15 to 20 minutes later, so I let him in, but I didn't mention to him about that. So we sat in the kitchen with beer, we laughed, etc. But I see there's something wrong with Andrew. When I asked what's wrong, he just said, "Can we go to your room? I feel like someone stares on me." Since English is not my first language, here's a layout of my house for better context later on. And of course, there is a link in the show notes to go to this post if you'd like to see that layout. Anyway, that got me pretty creeped for some stuff that happened before in my house, but I will explain that at the end. So I double-checked whether the front door are locked, and we went to my room. We watched some funny movies on YouTube, talked about girls and all that stuff. And something like 11 p.m. maybe, again, same sound, like someone was closing front doors. We looked at each other because we've heard the same thing. So we went to check it out. Guess beer plus 10 to courage worked, LOL. And yeah, front door are still locked. Rest of the night was pretty nervous, but nothing else happened. Guess worst part was when we got outside at like 4 a.m. because Andrew was going to his home and I was forced to go back alone. But I've stayed awake until sunrise, just for sure. Personally, I've got two stories what was happening. First, that the house itself got some kind of presence. From what I know, it was bought but placed from my dad's hometown. House is made of wooden logs and it was taken apart and put back here in one piece. But I don't know anything about the previous owners. Need to ask my mom about more details. The reason I said I was scared when Andrew says that he feels like someone is watching him are stories of first year when we moved into the house. Apparently, in that first year, my parents' room was barely usable because you've got a weird feeling when you entered it. Just like you enter a room full of people who don't like you and they stare at you, let that get the fuck out dude look. And Andrew sat in a chair opposite to Mom's room's entrance door. My second theory is all of that nearby area is more or less haunted since many people died here at World War II. So that's all for this story. If you have some questions, feel free to ask. Also, some ideas about what the hell was that would be nice. And any Polish listeners listening, I hope I pronounced that cemetery somewhat properly. Okay, this next one borders into time slip, interdimensional type stuff, and you know how much I love that. So 5 years ago, this was posted by Wreck-It Win. When I was younger, I almost died. What I saw, I can never forget. I'll be honest, I don't know if this is a paranormal or what it is. When I was 6, I got appendicitis. I had this for a while, but each time my mother took me to the doctor, he just said that it was a really bad stomach ache. He told my mother that I wouldn't be able to do the things I was doing. It was a child doctor, and I was playing with the toys and whatnot. If I had appendicitis. Turns out, I did have appendicitis. However, my appendix was not in the correct place, which is why this hadn't been diagnosed earlier. On a fine Tuesday afternoon, I was at my babysitter's house while my parents were at work. My appendix burst, and I can remember screaming from the pain, throwing up over the side of the couch and fainting into the pool of vomit. I'm told that an ambulance was called and I was rushed to the hospital. I remember bits and pieces here and there, and every time I came to, I would see an older guy I'd never seen before, and I seemed to be the only one seeing him. I can remember vividly what he looked like. He had a big, unruly beard that was very salt and pepper, slicked back dark hair and dark eyes. He wore a blank black Henley t-shirt with a faded leather jacket, tight jeans, and beat-up Converse high tops. I remember that the look in his eyes was one of melancholy and understanding, but at the time I could only call it sad, the way adults are when kids are hurt or upset. I only ever saw him a few times. I saw him in the ambulance, I saw him in the hospital, and what I can only assume was when I was in the ICU, and I saw him a few times in my room when I came out of surgery. He didn't say anything most times I saw him, and I thoroughly remember him shaking his head a few times, chuckling to himself. The last time I saw him, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw that he was by my bed, staring at my mom, who was asleep in the chair by my bed. As I looked at him, he turned and said the only thing he ever said to me. "This sucks, I know. Sorry, kid." Shortly after that, I discovered the movie and book, The Outsiders, and I became obsessed with the greasers. The guy I saw resembled this style, I think rather obviously. I wrote short stories, essays, and so on about the era, but as I grew older, I began to lose interest. But I never forgot the guy. One Halloween, a couple of years ago, I decided to dress up in random things I had that could be a greaser. This would have been 20 plus years later. I had a bet going on growing my beard, so I didn't shave either. So I did my best to recreate the look of a greaser and asked my wife, we were dating then, if I looked like one. She told me that I looked like a combination biker and greaser because of the beard, but the leather jacket and greased back hair was perfect. I went to the full-length mirror in my father-in-law's bedroom to check everything out, and there I was. A slightly younger version of the man I saw when I was 6. The biggest difference? My beard wasn't salt and pepper. I was in complete shock. My wife came over and asked me what was wrong. She said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Go figure. As the years have passed since that Halloween, I've gotten rid of my leather jacket and I don't wear Converse that often. I pluck the white hairs out of my beard because if I don't, I look more and more like that man. I have no fucking idea what the hell that was or why this has been happening. My wife tells me not to worry. She says everyone goes gray. I haven't told her about the man because it sounds fucking nuts. TLDR, my appendix burst when I was 6. I was rushed to the hospital, rushed into surgery. I saw an older gentleman that never left my side, looking completely out of place and with no one else seeing him. Now I see that man every time I look in the mirror. Edit. Thank you guys so much for the support in the comments. Makes me feel a hell of a lot less alone in my experiences. A lot of your comments have inspired me to be a bit more open about my experience, and I've decided to discuss this point in my life with my wife. I'll let you know how it goes. Edit 2. I told my wife. She was confused at first, asking me questions along the lines of, "Are you sure no one else saw this guy?" And could it have been some random bystander that happened to see you were in pain, etc.? I explained as best I could what I felt like and so on. It took about 4 hours to get to the end. Now she is insanely curious about who it could have been. If the person was real but being ignored, if a spirit protector, then who was it? Could Could it have been someone from an alternate universe? Could it have been an alien or a higher plane being, seen the future and knew what I would look like so as to use this look to bring a calming effect? All kinds of stuff. She's way more interested than freaked out, 100% wants answers, and has been reading random books to catch some insight into what it could have been. Not sure what I was scared of in telling her my story, but now she wants to talk about it all the time. It's her newest hobby. She asked me to do a sketch of the guy's face I saw. I doodle at best, and she wants to know what you guys think when I post it. I'll post when I finish the sketch. Ooh, what do you think it is? I like the wife's, one of her hypotheses about it being a higher plane being that looked into the future, knew what OP looked like, and used it as a way to bring a calming effect. Because if time isn't linear, no, I was going to say if time isn't linear, is there a part of us that does know what we will look like when we're older? So even though he didn't technically know it was him, there was a part of him who did know it was him. It's not the cider. I'm always like this. Wow. I love stuff like this so much. Because, like, who was it? What was it? Why was he being ignored? I like that the wife also was like, well, maybe it was just some guy. Maybe it was some guy. I don't know. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was aliens. We'll never know. This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. I don't know about you, but I've spent way too much of my life feeling scattered and not good enough for the world, agonizing over all the shoulds, wondering what I should be doing more of or should be doing less of, and how my life should be. I often speak of the tools I use to help combat these feelings, and Calm is one of them. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, and it's here to make you feel better. If you're like me and sometimes you need a little help with navigating life's ups and downs, I highly recommend Calm's sessions. They have guided meditations, grounding exercises, sleep stories, and sleep meditations. Some of them are even just a couple of minutes long for when you need to close your eyes for a second and have a soothing voice recenter you during the day. Their sleep meditations are absolutely beautiful, and they have these gorgeous soundscapes that truly take you to another world. Calm your mind, change your life. Calm has an exclusive offer just for listeners of my show. Get 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/SYTS. This is an amazing value. Go to calm.com/SYTS for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/SYTS. And tell Calm you heard about them from me. Speaking of some weirder stuff, let's get weirder. Let's move on from the paranormal subreddit to the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit. My home. 5 years ago, a deleted account posted this. My friends disappeared into another dimension. Mention. If this sounds familiar, I shared my story on this subreddit a few years ago through a throwaway account. Me and my friends have recently been talking about this, and getting their perspectives, I was told I should repost here with some new information and details to add. I'd like to disclose only one of us had a working phone, so call or text wasn't possible. 5 years ago, now in 2015, While me and my friends were in our early teens, I hosted annual Halloween get-togethers at my grandparents' house the day before the 31st with a few close friends. Nothing unusual, snacks, movies, and games. No drugs or alcohol, since my grandparents live around a quiet circle just outside of town. We would take night walks around between the hours of 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. just to walk and talk. For a better idea of the layout of the circle, it is a one-way entrance and exit neighborhood, about a quarter mile around, a 10 to 15-minute walk at most, built on a hill, with two flat stretches of road, one on top of the hill and one on the bottom of the hill. For privacy again, I'll be using my friend's initials, A-E-Z. So it was around 12 a.m. on our second loop around the circle. Me and A had grouped up, while E and Z grouped up, having our own conversations. Me and A got a little ahead of E and Z, lost in our conversation, I'd say only around 20 feet. We stopped when suddenly we could no longer hear them behind us. We waited for them to turn the corner at the top of one side for around 5 to 10 minutes, I'd say, before changing directions uphill to go look for them. Once on top of the hill, we looked down the flat stretch of road and couldn't see them. Thinking they had changed directions or had stopped further back than expected, we circled back the other way. We don't remember exactly how many times we stopped or looped the circle, but somewhere in the area of 4 loops, stopping periodically for 10 to 15 minutes to wait and changing directions once or twice. Me and A started getting concerned and decided they probably went back inside the house, so we went back inside to no avail. We sat and watched out the window for around half an hour, hoping we'd see them pass. I remember feeling sheer panic, thinking I would have to wake up my grandparents and explain how 2 teenage girls have been missing for almost 2 hours at this point. A wanted me to consider waking them up, or even possibly calling the police, assuming the worst. Around 1:30 a.m. now, I thought they might have left the circle. We decided to go out and look for them once more before waking my grandparents. We walked to the entrance, to the circle, and yelled for them without answer. Right when we went to loop the circle again, we saw their light coming from around the circle from the other side. We ran to them and asked them what happened and where they went. They seemed confused, said they'd only been separated from us for, at tops, 30 to 45 minutes. We looked at the phone and it was 2:10 a.m. We made our way back to the house and passed out shortly after. Me and A just felt an overwhelming sense of relief and could only correct the fact that they had been gone for over 2 hours. For a while, we thought E and Z had just pulled a prank on us and hid somewhere in someone's lawn. They both claimed to have never turned out their light or changed directions, only once on their last loop. By all means, we should have seen each other. 5 years later, and I've never really stopped thinking about it, and brought it up with the group. E and Z never pranked us. I got both their sides of the story. From E and Z's perspective, they were also in conversation and noticed we had gone ahead, but they remained going in the same direction, walking at a faster pace to catch up with us. They did not stop or change directions. They circled in the same direction for 3 loops, then stopped and checked inside the house before waiting in front of the house for what they said was around 10 minutes. They decided to jog back around the circle once more before finding us. They never heard us yelling for them, and before telling them how long they were gone for, they are both adamant they had been gone for less than an hour. It's impossible we just kept missing each other, considering me and A changed directions as soon as we couldn't see them, while they kept going in the same direction. And the amount of stops we took, not to mention the time difference. We all agree it's likely they went into an alternate dimension or reality, considering we can't find any reasonable explanation for being in the same place, but on different timelines. We want to recreate the situation, to test it maybe now while we all have mobile phones, and see if those are in any way affected. But in all honesty, I doubt it would happen again. Being as superstitious as I am, I think entries to different realities open randomly. But I do want to experience it myself one day. Until then, this remains the most unexplainable thing that's ever happened in our lives. Boy, do I love a time slip. I mean, that's kind of a classic one. It always freaks me out, though, like what happens to the other people. Like the two that were experiencing the 45 minutes. Like, where did they go? Or was it the other two who went somewhere? Are they both on the right timeline now? Or are those... I don't even know. I don't even know. Here's another glitch in the Matrix one by yet another deleted user. Oh, I wanted to say for that previous one, I would have looked up to see if they ever did an experiment, but as they mentioned, they did their first post on a throwaway account, and on this account, they deleted, so I can't find the actual user. Maybe I could use the Wayback Machine, but, you know, that's for another day. This next story is also by a deleted user, posted 10 months ago, and they called it Vanishing Man in Bar. When I was about 20, I lived alone in an inner city neighborhood in Atlanta. I was in college and pretty lonely, so I'd sometimes go to a local bar and read. One night, just before Halloween, I was at a bar and a guy sat next to me and started chatting with me. He was a bit older, blonde hair, and quite friendly. We shoot the shit for about half an hour when he looks at me with this serious look and says, "You should leave this place now." And then he vanished, like in front of me, just gone. I felt this fear and left immediately. The next morning, I was walking to the train for school and passed the same bar. It was taped off as a crime scene. There were police all over. I asked a bystander what's up, and they said a man had been murdered in the bathroom the night before. WTF? Lots of question marks. This one I did glance at the comments, and a lot of people said that that was his, like, guardian angel or guardian spirit. What do you think? Or was it the man who did the murder? I mean, he did vanish. He did say he vanished, so maybe it was something spooky and not the Occam's razor answer that I think I just gave. So these next two were responses to a question posed on the Ask Reddit subreddit by Puggy Pagalo. And they asked 4 years ago, what was the worst experience you've had during Halloween? I will say these next two are not spooky and they're both kind of bummers, but I wanted to include them because they're very Halloween-y. 80 Caked Enough said, "This happened to my friend who is not on Reddit. It's Halloween night and there's a knock on her parents' door. Dad goes to open it and there is a man with a bag on his head standing on their porch, silent. The man makes a move to step into their house and Dad pushes him backwards. Everyone watches as the man falls backwards off their step and smashes his head on the ground. It is revealed that the man with the bag is my friend's grandfather, Mom's dad, who was trying to Halloween prank them. He was rushed to the hospital with permanent damage, no longer able to care for himself or his wife, who had health issues as well. They both ended up in convalescent care. Additionally, my friend's mother never forgave her husband, placing the blame of the accident entirely on his shoulders. They divorced shortly after." And this next one by a deleted user. Junior year of high school, my cousin and I volunteered to drive some of the younger kids from church and chaperone their trick-or-treating. We were walking down the street, back toward my truck, when I hear a sound that was familiar but didn't click at first. I hear it again, and feel something whiz past me and hit the concrete. I realized it was someone with a pellet gun. About the time one of the little girls screamed this blood-curdling wail and fell down. He had shot her in the eye with a CO2-powered pellet gun. My cousin took off running toward a yard, leaned down and grabbed a hunk of gravel/concrete from the driveway and chunked it into the tree. He had a 92-mile-per-hour fastball and hit the kid, knocking him from a limb and onto the ground. I'm wrangling 7 kids from 6 to 12 years old, all screaming and crying, while my cousin is beating the boogers out of this guy's sinus cavity. Parents are running outside, and it's chaos when the police and ambulance finally show up. Long story short, kid with the pellet gun got an assault with a deadly weapon and another charge, and the little girl, 8 years old, lost her eye from the incident. Let's go back to Glitch in the Matrix, shall we? This was posted 7 years ago by Desuvius? Sure, we'll go with that. And they posted parallel jumping and the Mandela effect. There are several stories a lot like mine that seem to be trending on Reddit at the moment. Like many of you, I've had a similar experience that I'd like to share. I encourage you to share your stories as well. I have posted this story as a comment in another thread, but the purpose of me retelling this story here is because of the concept of parallel jumping. For many years, I used to work at this popular theme park in North Carolina. When I first started working there, I was maybe 16 or 17. It was as a chainsaw clown for their annual Halloween event. During this time of year, we only open/operate on the weekends. I would carpool with a group of friends from the city we lived in, about an hour away from the park. There would usually be about 5 of us squished into a Jeep. One night after work, we started heading back home, getting on the highway at about 2 a.m. I was in the back seat, sitting in the middle. I remember very distinctly being wide awake because I had just been working all night and was still full of energy. We were having a conversation about something random when all of a sudden, we lose control of the car and it swerves very sharply into the oncoming traffic of the highway. I remember the sheer panic as we were flying towards the front end of a semi-truck, and we hit it head on. For the record, time didn't really seem to slow down, and I didn't have any part of my life flash before my eyes. The very instant we hit the truck, I suddenly wake up in the backseat of the car, having the exact same conversation we were having only seconds before. It was as if everything rewinded by a few seconds. Before reading similar stories and experiences, I came to the conclusion that I must have somehow fallen asleep and had a dream, even though that really didn't seem likely. After researching some ideas and possibilities, I came to the conclusion that I jumped to a different timeline/reality. I believe in the multiverse theory and other similar theories. I thought maybe I was going crazy, but I see now I'm not alone. With having these experiences, I wonder if major certain events that we say are subject to the Mandela effect are actually just slightly different rules/histories of a previous timeline we experienced. For example, maybe before this situation, I really did grow up with the Berenstain Bears. Then I jumped, and now I actually grew up with the Berenstain Bears. Now, obviously, the Berenstain Bears is just a bland, generic example, and I'm in no way using it as proof to justify the theory. I'm simply using it to explain the concept and start the conversation. Maybe you had a similar experience, and suddenly this vivid memory you had turns out to have never actually happened. There are a lot of these types of examples like this that could apply. Just a thought. What do you think? Could these instances be connected? What do you think? I have a few personal Mandela effect moments. I'm not going to talk about them on here. For one, they wouldn't mean much because they're not universal. They're very personal to things that I experienced, obviously, like things with my family members. There's a particular one with my parents that I had this memory of them doing something, and I brought it up years later, and it wasn't anything special. It was just this kind of, there was like a specific thing that was kind of funny, and I remember being like, oh yeah, like that one time you guys did this and went to this thing, and they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, this has been like a part of my memory. Like, it's not even it's not a memory I would revisit often, but it was a memory I had. And I was like, you did this thing. You went to this thing. And they were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And Could be many things. Could be something they don't remember. It's because of what it was. It's unlikely they wouldn't remember it, but who knows? And maybe it was a dream I had, I remember when one of my cousins was really young, was like not quite a toddler, a little older than a toddler. He talked about the strawberries that my aunt was growing. And he just knew she was growing something about like the strawberries she was growing, like very matter of fact. And she was not growing strawberries. Where I grew up in the desert, strawberries did not grow well at all. And I remember her then being like, he must have had a dream that I had strawberries and he's a little kid, so he got confused. So, it could be stuff like that. But like this, he was a little older, or OP was a little older. Or not a little older, I guess he said like 16, 17. But yeah, I just wonder about stuff like this, where it's like I don't know. I know that it was more about the like final destination moment this person had. Like almost to a T, kind of a final destination type scenario. But the Mandela effect, I haven't talked about it much on this show, even though I talk a lot about, high strangeness and stuff. Maybe we'll talk about that a little more in the future. Now, let's move to a subreddit I don't believe I've read from before. Maybe I have. I can't say never, but I don't recall going here very often. But it's the subreddit True Scary Stories. And 5 years ago, I can't pronounce his name, Sater LIJS 13, whatever that is, titled their post True Halloween Stories and asked, what are some of your true Halloween stories? By the way, this person had their own Halloween story. It's kind of adorable because it's clear like someone played a prank on him as a kid. And I think he didn't ever realize it was a prank. It was like one of those Halloween fake chainsaw, or the chainsaw with the chain taken out type things, and like chased him and his friends, and like thought it was like he was an actual danger. And it's kind of a cute little story where he had no idea that it was a prank. And everyone in the comments is like, oh, I think you just got pranked by some teens. And that's adorable. But this was one of the comments from Ms. Brightside Dark that said, I have one. Halloween night in the early 80s. I was only a baby, but my parents lived next door to a couple and their 2 kids. The kids would often come knocking on the door in the middle of the night when their parents were fighting. My parents would let them spend the night and make them feel safe. Apparently the man was really cruel and abusive. Well, Halloween night comes around and the woman sent the kids to their grandparents' house for the night. She waits for her husband to fall asleep and proceeds to stab him like 40 times, making sure to kill him. My mother was a witness in court on the woman's behalf, and she did not serve much jail time. Anyway, like 25 years later, I'm talking to the people who live in the house now, and they ask if anything weird has ever happened there. I told them about the murder, and they were speechless. They said when they moved in, they had to have the place blessed due to strange activity. Can't help but to think it was the husband. Good for her. That's all I'm going to say about that. And our last story of the evening is by DJ Buffoon. This was posted 6 years ago, and they titled it Creeper in the Woods. This happened about 13 years ago when I was a sophomore in college, attending a liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or two of freshman year, I had found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks. 6 guys, myself included, and 1 girl. And they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough, but we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. We did some research and found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away, infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 7 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot, and you are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads surrounded by trees, very few streetlights, and very few houses. Without a GPS or a good sense of direction, one could easily get lost in there. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights just in case, but the goal was to keep driving until we collectively decided to pull over and go exploring. So, per the directions, we made a left off the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so in this dark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn and, to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see exactly what this was, stepped over the log, and noticed 2 narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say, the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched. But I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And in any case, the whole point of us being there was to get scared, not to mention the fact that we were 7 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing. And I mean massive. It was a large open field of unkempt grass, comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned, and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark, with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it, and sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows, and what I could see was an old white couch covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone. Because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway, we decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked toward the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His expression dropped and he pointed. We all turned, and on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see someone tall, lanky, and pale dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree, basically a do-si-do. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark, it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6'4" skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointing in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing. Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit, and the second he saw it, he gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm, and whispered, "What the fuck is that?" What happened next sent shockwaves through all of us. Whoever this was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked and ran back to the trail. Yet again, Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy shit!" I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away and closer to 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone was feeling the same way. Nearly 15 years later, we are still friends, living in different states, yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods. That really happened, right?" It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing maniacally in the woods at 1 a.m. and then ran directly for a group of young adults, not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the sound that I kept hearing while we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, he came for us that night. You can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of. That is the one story tonight, by the way, that gave me the absolute chills and still does, and makes me so uncomfortable, and I don't like thinking about it. That was so scary to me anyway. I don't know, I just found that one terrifying. Something about that text message they send each other, like the fact that 15 years later they still have to check in and be like, "That was real, right?" Ugh, it's like it haunts them. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of Dark Reddit Halloween. I had so much fun. I hope you did as well. Maybe I'll do this again next year. That was fun picking out all the little stories that had to do with Halloween. And I went to subreddits that I don't usually visit, trying to find some fun stuff. There was one I did not put on the show that I had in the script initially, but I took out because it was really intense and gross. And yeah, I might save that for next year, or maybe for a special on Patreon. I don't know. I was like, I already have a couple bummer stories in here. I'm going to take out the really gross bummer one because it was kind of a bummer too. So not to be a tease, but maybe I'll include it next year if you guys decide that this should be a fun little annual thing. All right, if you like the show, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever the fuck we call it now. I went to twitter.com today for something, and it didn't redirect anymore. That's the only reason I used X. I know it felt wrong, but I don't know if it's redirecting anymore. So anyway, Blue Sky, all the stuff, at scareyoutosleep. I mostly stick around Instagram. You can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak if you want to follow my personal account. Again, mostly Instagram. And if you'd like to submit a story to be considered for the show, you can send it to you can send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. You can also join the Patreon page for bonus content. And speaking of bonus content, this will be available for everyone, not just my Patreon people, but I do have some special things for you, don't worry. But I have been slowly working on a little haunted house, a little miniature haunted house that I'm painting. It's like one of those ones you get from Michael's, but I'm like doing all kinds of fun little stuff to it. And I've been filming it, and I'm going to do a voiceover for it. And I'm going to post that on YouTube soon. So keep an eye out for that. I have never done anything like this before. I'm working out my camera angles. I don't know how craftsmen get such good camera angles when they're working on things. And it's so, bear with me, but it's been a challenge the first time filming something like this before. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that. I want to do something fun, different for Halloween and utilize my very underutilized YouTube channel. And thank you for being here. I know around this time of year, there's so much spooky content to consume. So many people I know do like 31 days of things. And so I appreciate you taking the time to come remember a little old me over here on Scare You to Sleep. That's one reason I don't like to overwhelm everyone with so much stuff, is because everyone else is doing so much stuff. Even places that don't usually do spooky content are right now. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank you for being here. What else? I don't think I have any announcements. Oh, check out the Bloody Disgusting podcast. Woof. It's getting late. I'm getting mush mouth. Check out the Bloody Disgusting podcast on YouTube. It's so much fun. Xena and I have been having a blast. And yeah, check it out. It's been fun. And we love all your comments and your horror hot takes. We have a hotline over there where you can call in with your horror hot takes. And I don't think I have, I don't know. I don't think I have much else to announce. I'm going to a Bigfoot festival on Saturday. So if anyone's going to a Bigfoot festival in Southern California, I can't remember the exact city name because I'm driving a few hours to go to it. But that should be fun. I'll take some pics, some footage, post that on the gram, you know. So keep a lookout for that. Yeah. And I will see you all next week for some special things. You'll see. All right. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams. This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Today's episode is sponsored by I Know What You Did Last Summer. Get it now on digital. When 5 friends inadvertently cause a deadly car accident, they cover up their involvement and make a pact to keep it a secret rather than face the consequences. A year later, their past comes back to haunt them, and they're forced to confront a horrifying truth. Someone knows what they did last summer and is hell-bent on revenge. As one by one, the friends are stalked by a killer, they discover this happened before, so they turn to 2 survivors of the legendary Southport Massacre of 1997 for help. Starring Madeline Klein, Chase Sue Wonders, Jonah Hauer King with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt. I Know What You Did Last Summer is a perfect summer slasher, says Jordan Cruciolo of NPR. Your summer is not over yet. Don't miss a killer movie night at home.
From Bloody FM, step into a mysterious shop where every object has a sordid tale to tell.
You have plunged so deep into the depths of despair.
Meet the antique dealer and a rotating cast of the best in horror.
I didn't believe in stuff like this. This wasn't real.
Daddy's head exploded.
Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel, David Dasmalchian, Jocelyn Donahue, and more.
I don't know what you are, and I don't know what's going on here.
Hun, don't go to the 9th floor.
I have something I want you to see.
Immerse yourself as the darkness is brought to life through interactive stories, connecting you with the events in real time.
It is just so unbelievably fun.
Please don't kill me.
The antiquarium of sinister happenings and odd goings-on. No refunds, no exchanges. Experience it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.